I mean, I bumped into you earlier this week, and we were talking about this case, and we were both expecting the Mail on Sunday to, have a very good chance of winning this case. It wasn't because they'd already lost the case. This was the appeal in the appeal court. And the judge basically went with Meghan Markle, despite the fact that she'd apologised to court only a few weeks ago for basically, well, we're using the word misleading, but being very forgetful. I mean, I think that if I briefed someone who'd written a best-selling international book about me, I might remember that I'd done that. I'm going out on a limb here. But why on earth do you think the judge came down on Meghan's side?
Well, it's interesting. I think the judges have moved the goalposts a little. So in the old days, it was if you had a reasonable expectation of privacy, then in those circumstances, you were entitled to keep it private. And of course, a private letter from an estranged daughter to a father is obviously confidential and private. But of course, what the Daily Mail, and so as a consequence, I thought she had a slam dunk case at the beginning. But the Mail on Sunday brought forward some really interesting evidence, which really was that their case was that this letter was part of a PR strategy. It was always intended to be leaked. It wasn't just a risk that it would, but it was part of the strategy. And of course, they had evidence that Meghan's four friends had briefed People magazine on the contents of the letter, and also that Omid Scobie had been told about the letter, and her PR person, Ken Sunshine, had also briefed on the letter. And in those circumstances, the question really for the court was, did she have a reasonable expectation of privacy if she anticipated doing all these things? And the court said, actually, that traditional analysis isn't necessarily right anymore. And what we do is we look at the letter itself and say, is that private? And the answer of that is obviously yes. And in those circumstances, it's up to her how much she invades her privacy, when she does it, what information she gives, and to whom and how she disperses that information. Yeah. And of course, that prevents us presenting an alternative narrative of perhaps the unvarnished truth.
Well, that's the thing. That has massive repercussions. And there was always that technicality of the fact that she owned the copyright of that letter, even though she sent the letter to her father, Thomas Markle, and he owned the letter. She owned the actual words of the letter, which is, I mean, quite confusing, I think, for a lot of us. You'd have thought he'd have the right to give it or sell it to anyone he wanted to. But this is it. So we're basically in this situation now where any famous person, anyone in the news, they can put out their version of events however they want. And if it's an invasion of their privacy, the information you get, which exposes them actually for complete hypocrisy or lying, you may really seriously be questioning whether you're allowed to publish it. That is not healthy.
No, it's not healthy. And of course, it puts us out of step with every other major legal jurisdiction. Obviously, in America, this letter could have been lawfully published, but also Canada, Australia, New Zealand, pretty much any Commonwealth country and almost anywhere in Europe. And so as a consequence, we are effectively preventing British newspapers from publishing this kind of thing, but not foreign newspapers. So it doesn't actually resolve the problem of privacy. So Thomas Markle gave this letter to the Mail on Sunday in California. But if this had been published by a Californian paper and not by the Mail on Sunday and not available on the internet in this country, then in those circumstances, there was nothing that could be done about the publication of the letter.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Well, of course, the Mail on Sunday, Associated Newspapers, they've said, they're looking at whether they might appeal to the Supreme Court. The crucial thing here is there was never a trial. There was never cross-examination of witnesses. This was decided in a sort of a pre-court case hearing by a judge, and they've sort of argued against it again and again. I find it absolutely extraordinary that the person bringing the case can have basically had to apologise to the court for misleading. I mean, I don't know anyone who believes that version of events at all. And yet the Mail on Sunday are not being given a chance to actually question her and her friends and her version of events in a court. That seems to me to be a denial of fundamental natural justice. And no one is going to go to prison as a result of this. But fundamentally, if you bring a case against someone, you should be willing to go to court to fight that case.
Well, I think that this victory for Meghan Markle has put the Mail and indeed all of the media in a position where this case almost has to be appealed. because it's a very preliminary hearing, it's unlikely that the Supreme Court will take it, although I'm sure they will ask them to, because they'll say it's a point of wider interest. I'm not sure I buy that. But it is almost a racing certainty, I think, that they go to the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg. And I think they'll do that because of the very reason that you put your finger on, which is that they didn't get a trial. Yeah. So what they will say is, look, yes, she had a reasonable expectation of privacy, but that needs to be balanced against our right to publish this information because it was always intended to be publicised. And what she didn't like was the way in which we covered it.
Exactly.
And so they say we should have the right, whether we win or lose, to test the evidence, to have disclosure, to have the judge make that assessment. And they will say we have not had the opportunity of a fair trial. And there's every possibility that they could win that, I think.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you, Mark. talkRADIO's world correspondent. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Well, we talked about this yesterday, what we thought might likely happen. It was extraordinary. Meghan has said it was a win, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever felt scared to stand up for what's right. I think a lot of people, though, are absolutely stunned by this decision, given that associated newspapers didn't even get a chance to fight this in court, to cross-examine witnesses, and that she's already had to admit to the court and apologise for misleading the court.
Yes, and although the Court of Appeal said yesterday that it didn't actually matter as far as that was concerned.
I mean, how can it not matter?
That's a very good question. I don't understand. And I think there are questions to be answered as far as that is concerned, as to exactly what is going on there. And that is the big problem. So from that perspective, the Meghan seems to have got away with it, as far as I'm concerned. And she wants privacy, but it's what she is absolutely adamant about is she wants to do it on her own terms. And she wants to control everything. And her statement was just, once again, an over-the-top sort of eulogy that she is the saviour of the universe.
But this is the thing, because I mean, I was always sort of taught as a journalist, and also once I'd got sort of vaguely into the public eye as a jobbing hack, that you need to protect aspects of your privacy. So if you want to bring your kid onto a red carpet and sell pictures of them to a celebrity magazine, well, then you've basically invaded their own privacy, and that gives almost a free for all. For other media to do it. Meghan and Harry don't have a choice about, expected to show a picture of their baby and things, but the way they've spoken about some very intimate private details about her pregnancy, about their emotions and about family conversations, those are things that most people don't share even with their colleagues at work, let alone with billions of people around the planet on Oprah Winfrey. So, I mean, they are very happy to invade their own privacy whenever they feel like it. They just don't want other people to do it, especially when other people are making it not look quite as rosy as they try to paint it.
Yeah, and that was the point of the Oprah interview when she went on to Ellen DeGeneres. The whole thing is trying to control the image. Now, this just feels wrong in the sense that they tried to correct it with what came out in the subsequent Court of Appeal, but she is definitely trying at all times to manipulate it in her favour. And yes, she briefs all the people that she wants to do to make sure that her rose-tinted view of the world is seen by one and all. And that is the problem that I think is annoying people. Yes, she's won it. It won't go to trial. Maybe you could say the reason the Court of Appeal are probably saying, well, we don't want to drag the royals through a messy court case because we'd have to hear all sorts of evidence, which might be one of the sort of defences for the Court of Appeal. But it does feel a little bit wrong that she's got away with one here. And maybe now, what it seems to me is that the press will be even more determined to find the stories
absolutely.
on her.
And certainly we've seen the Ted Verity, the editor overall of the Mail Group, he's saying that they're looking at an appeal to the Supreme Court. We spoke a little bit earlier to Mark Stevens, the media lawyer. He said he expected it would go all the way, to human rights legislation. Because the fundamental right of a newspaper to publish something which they weren't exposing something, they were correcting a false impression that she had given about this letter she'd written to Thomas Markle.
Absolutely. And she, basically that's why she wrote it, and knowing, and she said that it would end up in the press. Yeah. So I just, I don't know what she was trying to achieve. She wants her cakes and eat it. There's a touch of the Marie Antoinette's about her, the fact, and that is what I find frustrating. I'm sure There will be plenty more to be heard on this particular case.
There will. Absolutely. We'll have to leave it there. Rupert Bell, we'll have to leave it there. Royal correspondent for Talk Radio, thank you so much.